Hello and welcome to another episode of More Than Milestones. I am here today with Beth Gaskill of Big City Readers, and I am so excited for this conversation because we are going to dig into all things kindergarten readiness and reading curriculums and all of it. But first, Beth, thank you so much for being here. You want to just tell us a little bit about yourself for anybody that doesn't know you yet?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited for this podcast, by the way. I'm already like, this is the number one podcast. I know it.
Oh my God. Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm Beth Gaskill. You might know me as Miss Beth. I am a former teacher turned literacy specialist and turned advocate, curriculum developer, speaker, podcaster. I don't have a really good elevator pitch, but basically it's hard. There's a lot of things we do.
Yeah.
So I was a learning behavior specialist and classroom teacher, and then I left and built a tutoring company. And kind of what I realized is that so many kids were needing tutoring, and I was like, this feels off. Like, why are this many kids needing tutoring? And so we kept our tutoring company going, and then I built an early childhood literacy curriculum so that we could, instead of solve the problem, we could prevent the problem by giving parents more resources to what kids need to know before they even walk into kindergarten. And we built a couple of storefronts in Chicago, and now we are mostly digital, and I do a lot of trainings for school districts and libraries. We love to help celebrate literacy and all learning behaviors and community and helping support families along the school journey.
I love it. And we actually, I don't know if I ever even told you this, but my daughter was having a little bit of trouble with just the foundational stuff. And I just felt we'll talk about this, and I'm not, on my caveat, I love our school system. I'm not at all knocking my personal one, which is the only one I've experienced with. But it did feel like they were in the middle of shifting curriculums. And it felt like there were some pieces missing that I was like, I feel like you should know that before you try to know that. So we took it was getting ready for first grade, whichever one. And it was a brief one that you ran, and she loved it. She would be like, okay, I'm ready for Miss Beth today. And I felt like even for me, I was like, oh my God, I'm an avid reader and I don't know any of those things, any of those little nuances. Magic E, who knew? That's crazy. There's so many things that it blew my mind. So anyway, it was helpful for her, but also really helpful for me. So anyway, let's get into it. Okay. I would kind of love to start by just talking about kindergarten readiness in general, because I feel like it's so hard as a parent to know what should you actually be supporting your child before kindergarten? Are the expectations just absurd now? And kids are expected to be reading in kindergarten when that's really not necessarily always having been considered developmentally appropriate. I would just love to talk about that because I think that's a big source. It was a huge source of anxiety for me and still kind of is, especially for my son, who I know is probably going to need a little bit more support in that. So I would love to hear your thoughts on kindergarten readiness.
Oh my gosh. It is so dramatic, honestly. First of all, that's my first thought. And, it's like, can we all just relax? They're babies. Kindergartners are still babies. And
Yes.
We're acting... There's so much debate. I get into so much debate online about this because, everybody's talking about red shirting. And if people don't know, that's either delaying kindergarten or doing a second year of kindergarten so that kids have an advantage. And it's we're so far from what is appropriate for kids by being the best answer is to red shirt because it gets into such an equity thing because not everyone has that opportunity and not everyone knows that they can advocate for that for their child, and not every school district allows it, and every state is so different. So kindergarten, let's just be honest, is a mess in the United States. I'm speaking only on behalf of the United States.
Yeah.
And there's no regulation in education. There could be one thing happening. You could have twins in the same exact school, and across the hall, two teachers are teaching different things.
Why is that though? I have noticed that. How could that be? How is no one what? That's terrifying.
You really want to know? I know. You really want to know it. Well, it's because there's not enough care that in the education system, not from the teachers, from higher levels.
Yes.
Obviously not from the teachers and the schools. They care. And that's why there's differences, because teachers care so much. And so they realize that they're missing something. So they try to go get a training on their own. I have teachers that I do consultations with on their lunch breaks, and they're like
Oh my
showing me
God.
their students' spelling tests. And they're like, help me understand this. They're paying out of their own pocket for extra resources, extra curriculum, extra training. So that's why different stuff is happening, because at different points in life, like you notice something. It's not like one teacher notices and the other one notices and doesn't care. You just have
Yeah,
so much going on in the classroom. So one teacher might notice and then might have more resources personally to pay for an extra curriculum or an extra training. So then they have the extra training. And,
totally.
it's just like kind of like this. A lot of times the school is like everyone for themselves. And so there might be a teacher that's like a squeaky wheel that's like, we need this kind of training. I was that at my school. And you're still met with teachers that are like, I got too much going on. I can't come in early for extra training. I'm not spending my
Yeah.
summer doing that. So it's like temperament of teachers and people in general, and the freedom of some schools being like, yeah, you can add this in your classroom, but it's not going to be required of every teacher. So kind
Gotcha.
of depends on the level of energy and what the teacher notices and how much access they have to that information.
Yeah.
I was teaching a certain way, and I was teaching the wrong way to kids how to read, and I didn't notice until I noticed, like I did it for
Yeah.
years. And then I was like, wait. And then I asked for more resources and more training, but I didn't know to ask for that. So again, we were talking about this earlier about advocacy, that I'm like, I got to tell teachers how to ask for the
Yeah.
resources.
Yeah.
So
I think
that's
part of
why.
it too. Yeah. It also, I love that answer, but I also like teachers, we adore you. I don't at any point in this conversation want any teacher to feel like any part of this is like an attack or a judgment. Like this is just an honest conversation. And like what you're saying even reminds me of being a therapist, and like if a certain kid hadn't come across my caseload at a certain point in my learning, there are courses I never would have taken, but I was like stumped. And I was like, I didn't learn about
Right.
this in school. Let me go take this course. Again,
Right.
access, the privilege of being able to do that. But like that has to be a huge component too. Like having a kid that you're like, what do I do to help
Right.
them, to support them,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what that also made me think about was we've gotten really lucky in that the kindergarten classroom that both of my girls were in was the integrated classroom, which is half special ed and half regular
Mm.
ed. And so the special ed teachers were able to pull in like movement-based reading learning, and I know that you talk a lot about that. And I have that on our little outline of something I wanted to chat with you about, because as a PT, I'm like, yes, like I love that. That is like incredible. But their classroom was the only one doing that because they were the only one that had a special ed teacher in there that had
Yeah.
that training. So it's like we've gotten lucky, but how it would impact other kids to also have access to that, and what it looks like for them in going into first grade to have that like different foundation.
Yeah.
So do you feel though that
I
I
know
know
we
the
didn't
answer
even
to this.
answer kindergarten
I know.
readiness. I'm like,
I
what?
I already know the
Yeah.
answer. But do
Okay,
you
tell
feel
me.
that we are pushing to read too soon? And how do you know? How can you start to identify if your child is having like early reading struggles, if that's even a
Mm.
valid thing to be trying to identify?
Those are great questions. Okay, two things. One, this reminds me, like I a couple of years ago had like these trolls attacking me, and they were like, they were like, she's selling an MLM of making 2-year-olds learn how to read, and I was like, what? I'm like, I'm the only. I'm like, I'm the only one here. And second of all, if you like follow me for a second, like, that I'm like, we're pushing stuff too early. Like, I'm play based. I'm like, but that doesn't mean that we don't give them kids the resources and the foundation. So I don't think that we need we do need explicit instruction in literacy, but that doesn't mean that 2, 3, 4-year-olds need to learn how to read. But there are a lot of foundations that we can start laying. And that does happen through play. It can happen at the grocery store. It can happen while you're driving your car. And that's my goal, is to give parents and teachers that I work with like those realizations. It's like, it doesn't need to look like, here, I'm going to teach you how to read. And it doesn't look like memorizing these words. It looks like playing with sounds when you pick up an apple and say, we're going to get apples for dinner. Apple. What's the last sound you hear in apple? I think parents and often preschool teachers focus so much on like A is for apple, and we forget like we need to focus on the rest of the sounds in words to help kids build that foundation before we even put the letters in front of them.
Totally. That makes total sense. Okay, so how do you feel about sight words and memorization?
Why did you do that to trigger me?
But I love the way you talk about it because it's just so honest, and like it gave me so much relief when I was like, why aren't you memorizing this? Like, you have to. And then I was like, yeah, no, Beth said no. So leave us alone. So tell us what your thoughts are.
Hey, leave us alone. I do feel like I get into trouble because people will like go to their teacher and be like, well, Miss Beth said, and like, I'm sure like people are like, great, thanks for telling me what Miss Beth said, your imaginary friend.
Your social media bestie. I love it.
I do feel like I am people's besties because actually I was over at someone's house, my friend's house the other day. We used to teach together like 15 years ago, and then she actually worked at Big City Readers and now she stays home with her kids. But we've like have aligned on teaching and all the things for a very long time. And I saw this worksheet on her refrigerator and it was like sight words, and it was like, but don't worry, we're not memorizing. But then it like didn't say what they are doing. And I was like, what do people do if they're not you? Like if I'm a parent that knows nothing, like I am going to be so confused on this sheet coming home. You know, like you have to be so, it made me realize like I need to make more simplified content because I'm like, parents aren't like absorbing everything I say on a podcast, everything I explain about sight words. Like they got to think about other things, like their baby learning how to walk, or what they're going to make for dinner, or like why their kid hit another kid at recess, like their soccer sign up. So I think, overlook this piece. So anyway, that's my first thought on sight words, is that it can be very confusing. The second thought is sight words. If you are brand new to hearing this for the first time, sight words will hopefully not be sent home in your child's kindergarten classroom, because we're actually changing laws. I think at this time, 16 states have changed laws to ban this old way of teaching reading, which is known as whole language. It doesn't mean like those two words. It's an actual type of reading teaching that has been going on for a long time, and it was teaching somebody. A few people will remain nameless. Said, you know what? This seems too hard to tell kids to sound out words. It's so slow. Wouldn't it be so much better if we just told them the word and they just memorized it and then they know the word? And it seems
It's horrible.
I know.
It's
when you
horrible.
think about it, it is, but it seems like it makes sense because in that moment, it's kind of like if you're like out with your kids and they're like, I'm hungry. And the only thing you see is cotton candy and you give them the cotton candy. Like, how long do you have until they're going to be actually hungry? Like, that's not really going to satisfy them, but it might buy you 5 minutes. But that's what sight words are. So if you get a list of words and it's like someone will say, like, these are the most frequently occurring words in early texts. Like, if kids know these 100 words, then they can read this many books, but it's really just teaching to the test. And so if kids know these words, it makes it look like they're reading, but they're fake reading. Like we're literally teaching them to fake that they know how to read. And then we see that kids struggle when they get to 3rd and 4th grade. The reading test scores decline rapidly. And our nation's report card shows us, I think it's 66% of 4th graders are not reading proficiently.
Wow.
And I know. And that's because we're like, doing the wrong things. We're putting Band-Aid on a bullet hole, to quote my girl Taylor Swift. And probably other people. But the sight word thing is like, we're just pushing them along and we are doing a huge disservice. So no, don't tell kids to memorize sight words, but that also doesn't mean that those words don't exist. There's just a proper way to teach them how to read those words and a proper way to store it in the brain for more rapid retrieval.
Because there is always a rule, right? Like even with sight words, because that was kind of how it was explained to me when I was like stressed about it. And it was like, well, there's no rules that fit with sight words. From following you, I'm like, I don't believe that's true anymore. Is it? Like there is always a rule.
There's about 4% of words in the English language can't be decoded. That's it.
Okay.
No, like whoever them is they say, words, this many words, these 500 words can't be decoded. That's not true. Decoding, so phonics is the code and decoding is like learning the code of phonics. And so when we say decoding, it just means like going sound by sound. And so if you take the word said and you teach your child to read it the same way you would teach a word that is decodable. So say the word cat is decodable because those are typically the sounds We tell them to isolate each sound and count the sounds. They can count there's 3. Then we spell the right letter for each sound. A word like said, spelled S-A-I-D, sounds like it's ed. And so you would think it's an E in the middle. So you still help them notice each of the sounds. And the trick here is that you teach them to memorize the part that is irregular and not the whole word. And the reason for that is because we're still then decoding it. So that means we're teaching our brain how to read that word rather than teaching it how to memorize that word. And that's like a different part of our brain going from memorizing to decoding. So we're doing a lot of code switching in the brain if we're going, some words are just memorized, some words are decoded. But if we teach them to decode the word and just memorize the irregular part, then that stores it in the same place. So then that their reading doesn't get disrupted when the word is irregular.
That makes a lot of sense. So now, I'm 36. We learned via phonics, correct? Like hooked on phonics, right for me. Like we all know the jingle. Or
Well,
did we though? Because I don't know the rules. Like, did I just forget them all?
I don't I don't know, but typically I'm the same age. Typically our generation did not learn phonics. We learned whole language in the 90s. Again, it's always like this the science of reading is the excuse me. The science of reading is the body of research that like phonics is stemmed in. Obviously that's not new. So there's always been shifts. This many decades is whole language focused. This many decades is phonics focused. So there's always going to be teachers or schools that were a little different than the times. So it's hard to say. Like, typically, it was more whole language focused in the 90s. I was in a terrible program called Reading Recovery that is like been known as like the worst thing ever that you can do for a struggling reader.
Oh my
And
God.
I know, but that's why I built Big City Readers, because I was like, I hated going to school from the moment I was pulled for reading instruction until I was in college. Like, I hated school. I had so much anxiety and shame and panic. And it was just because I was so embarrassed that I had to go to a reading specialist, but it wasn't my fault, you know? So that's a lot of what we also like to talk about is like helping parents
Yeah.
understand how to talk to their kids. Like, I always tell parents, like, if they're struggling with reading or saying I hate this or that this is hard, be honest with them. Say, it's not hard because it's hard for you. You're probably actually not being taught the right way. I don't even know these tricks myself. So
Mhm.
let's learn them together and see if we can crack the code.
Totally, totally. I feel like that kind of perfectly segues into the reading curriculum conversation that I would love to have, because I think it's hard when you're not in this to even know, like, what are the different types, like, okay, so we know there's whole language now. We've covered that there is phonics. And then I know one of my good friends is a reading specialist. And when Aude was initially having a little bit of trouble, I had reached out to her and she suggested getting some of Orton Gillingham's stuff. And that
Yeah.
was super helpful too. But like, I never would have known about that if it wasn't for her mentioning it. So like, what
Mm.
can you give parents that like just don't know kind of an overview of like, this is what you could expect, and this is what might tip you off. Like your kid coming home with sight words will tip you off that they're doing whole language learning. Your kid coming home, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. Okay, first of all, your friend is a good reading specialist because Orton Gillingham are like the magic words you want to hear. Like you said, like, okay, red flag might be if they're coming home with a sight word list to memorize. Green flag would be hearing the words Orton Gillingham.
Yeah.
Those are two of like the original researchers in the science of reading. That's what I'm trained in, and that's what
Okay.
all Big City Readers courses are built in. It's funny, some people will message like, do you have any help for kids with dyslexia? I'm like, actually, that's my training first. We just found, probably like you notice with PT stuff, like if kids are, if a child is struggling with learning to crawl because they have something wrong with their hips or legs, that doesn't mean that these tips aren't going to help kids who don't have a problem with their hips and legs, So
Yes.
similarly with Orton Gillingham being specific for kids with dyslexia, it also helps most kids.
Oh, I didn't realize it was specific to kids with dyslexia. I had no idea, but it was
Yeah,
really helpful.
it's so helpful. And most kids, it does help most kids. Like 85% of kids benefit from, it's called explicit systematic instruction. And that just means that like we literally follow a pattern and a rule. We like introduce a rule when they've learned the last rule. But okay, you said what would be green or red flags parents should look out for, because if they don't
Or
know about
just like
curriculum.
Yeah, even just like general for parents that to understand how their child is being taught. Like
Mm.
what would be a tip off of something coming home with them, or like,
Mhm.
if their child is hung up in one area, they can be like, okay, maybe they're being taught this way. Maybe I should explore this other curriculum that may help, kind of thing.
Okay. So, one, I would say it's first of all, like go into anything with curiosity. And anything that I share, I don't want people to like go into the school like all fired up and be like, "You're not teaching my kid the right way." Because we don't know, what's going on. So remembering like to just like ask, be like, "Hey, I'm learning more about reading curriculum. I'm learning more about reading instruction. Can you explain to me what's happening in the classroom, or could you give me a sample lesson that happens in small groups? I'm just like so curious, and I want to make sure that what we're doing at home aligns with what's happening in the classroom." So that right
Love that.
there like doesn't put like the school or the teacher on the defense. And I'll say though, with this caveat, if the teacher is on the defense, that's your first like a little bit of a warning. You don't really want a teacher or a school that's like, don't ask. You want a school
Yeah.
that welcomes the questions.
Yeah.
And you want somebody that's like, great. Oh my gosh, thank you. Me, I would be like, oh my gosh, I worked so hard on this curriculum. I can't believe somebody wants to see it.
Yes.
So I would just like go into that curiously.
I think that makes a really big difference too, just across the board in like communicating with your child's school and teachers. And even like as a therapist, like I want parents to want to know what I'm doing. Like I want to be treating a child and then be like, why are you doing that? What's that going to do for them? Like, but I have worked with therapists that like bristle and take it as like a
Mhm.
challenge. And I think that part of that is personality, but I also think that part of that is the presentation, right? Like if a parent is like, or if I went to my child's school with, I'm like, what are you teaching them? Versus like, I would love to support them more at home. How, like, can you just tell me a little bit more about it? Like, I just feel like that caveat, it's a nice caveat in general for anyone
Yeah.
interacting with. Yeah. But
Well,
anyway, sorry,
and
back to, oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, and also you can like build that relationship first. Like, so start early building the relationship. Like, maybe it's before you even have any questions. You're reaching out to the teacher and saying, like, I'm Casey. I am so excited for you to be our teacher this year. Do you have an Amazon wish list? I'd love to support your classroom. Like, just
Oh,
like
I love that.
building that bridge of so then it's not just like out of nowhere, like, hey, explain to me what you're doing. I listened to a podcast and a lady told me that I'm probably need to ask questions.
Totally, totally. Hey friends, Casey here. If you've ever listened to an episode and thought, I wish she'd go even deeper, or I wonder what she really thinks about that, I am so excited to share More Than Milestones Unfiltered, where I do exactly that. More Than Milestones Unfiltered is my private Substack community where I share 2 exclusive podcast episodes every single month. 2 episodes that will never make it to Instagram or the public feed. These are the even more raw, unfiltered stories, harder conversations, and the that's a story for another day moments I usually hold back on. If you want to join me there, just head to the show notes or my link in bio and subscribe. I'd love to see you inside. Okay,
Yeah.
so there is the whole language, sight words, red flag. Not a red flag. Maybe a red flag. There is
How they're taught is the red flag. So if it's just memorized, that's the red flag. If it's like
okay.
this is how we're teaching them, that's the green flag.
Okay. And then other with like what are the curriculums that those states that are banning that moving forward with? Like what does that curriculum look like?
Yeah, so we want to see or hear the word science of reading based, and that just means it's rooted in the science of reading research. What that often looks like is okay, it's not going to look like spelling tests. It might look like, okay, actually, let me rephrase. It's not going to look like memorized words. Like, okay, a spelling test typically would be like, these are the 10 words we're going to be tested on Friday. But a science of reading backed curriculum would look more like this is the spelling pattern we're studying this week. Here are 20 words. They're going to be tested on a few of these words to see if they understand the pattern at the end of the week. So that might be like the rule we're learning this week is AR says R. So the words would be like star, far, car. They're not going to have 10 exact words that they're going to be tested on. They're going to have the pattern that they're tested on. And I would say like a lot of writing. They'll look at writing because I think writing is I can see so much about how much a child is understanding in one piece of writing. Every couple months I'll say, send me a picture of your child's writing on Instagram and I'll tell you what they need help with because I can pretty much assess where they're at from just one piece of independent writing.
Wow. And does that kind of tie into that motor learning piece as well? So like is it different what a special education teacher is learning, like the one that is doing the arm move? Like that's how my kids learned, and it was incredible. Like I still am mind
Yeah.
blown, like, and feel so fortunate. But is that a curriculum, or is that specific to like special education?
Well, it depends. Okay, so in Orton Gillingham training, it's multisensory. So you do want to see things like cross body movements. So for those sight words, the way that we do it is after we decode it, like that, is then we're going to hold it in your hand. And this is why good training for teachers is so important. You're going to hold that word in your left hand if you're right-handed, and you're going to spell the word down your arm. So we're crossing that midline in our body, and we're storing that word in our brain for more rapid retrieval. There's also going to be like sound practice in sand or shaving cream. We're going to spell
Mm.
words in the air. So we're doing a lot of crossing the midline. We're doing a lot of multisensory things. We're going to be listening to it. We're going to be saying it. We're going to be looking at it all at the same time. So science of reading often is, or in Gillingham specifically, is multisensory literacy instruction. And as you know, like the more senses we use, the more we make that stick.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that so much. So
Oh,
is
that's what I
there
was going to say. One thing though about this is why training is important. I worked with a family and they were like, the school had bought some science of reading curriculum, but they didn't do training for the teachers, which is like, baby steps. We got to celebrate it. But the family I worked with, the child was spelling the words down their arm and they were not getting it. And I was like, is she left-handed? And they're like, yeah. And so it's the other way. So we're going in the direction that we're writing. We're writing this way if we're
Oh my
right-handed,
gosh.
but left-handed is that way. And so it was not making sense in her brain.
Wow, that's wild. Okay, I hope you heard that if you have a lefty. That is such interesting information. Wow.
Yes. Oh, I guess I should explain. Left-handed goes from wrist to shoulder. Right-handed goes from shoulder to wrist.
That is so fascinating. Wow, that makes me want to look into that a little bit more. Now, how can parents well, I think we touched on this a little bit, but in terms of like navigating and advocating, is there a
Mm.
way? So 16 states right now, that's still a whole lot of states that's not happening in. Is there a way that parents can, even just within their district, get involved to like encourage or advocate or, help?
Yeah. Okay. Also, by the way, I just looked up. It's actually only 15 states right now. Just had to fact check myself. So that poor
Womp.
state, I was wishful thinking for 16. And also, wait, I should add that it's not just like the sight word thing. It's the whole method of like different things, like 3Qing. What is the shape of the word? What is the picture? Could you take a guess at what it could be? So that also, circling back to that, parents can cover up pictures and see if their kids can read the words without the pictures. That's like a good indicator of what your child is understanding. If they can't read it without the pictures, they aren't reading it. Or like take a decodable book that comes home and just write the words at random on a dry erase board and see if they can still read those words out of the sentence. That's also an indication of what's going on.
That was one of my actually biggest cues is I was watching Audrey and it would be like she would literally look at the word and then she would look at the picture and look back at the word, look back at the picture, and I started covering up the picture and it would fall apart. Like nothing, And I was like, okay, that's interesting to me. Like I understand looking at it for context clues or like that sort of thing. Maybe once you already have a little bit more of a foundation, but like she was just
Right.
guessing based on the picture, So I think that's a really helpful tip for parents because that was for sure one of the first things that like kind of tipped me off that I was like, well, what's going on here,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if parents are noticing that, like what can they do, if
Well,
anything?
two things. One, like, let's protect how the kids are feeling. We don't want to be like a gotcha moment. So I always like to say, like, you did such a great job and you were so good at reading the pictures. Now we're going to play it a different way. I'm going to cover the pictures. Can we try to read the words now? Just
Love
like
that.
the delivery of it, like, so they're not like embarrassed. Be like, no, you're looking at the
Totally.
pictures. You're not reading. Like, just be like, oh, you did great. That's something a lot of people do. Let's see if we can just do the words.
I love that.
And like take breaks, like do frequent short things. So if you do notice that's happening, one, like I would take a deeper dive into what's coming home. Like I always say, you can send me a picture of like the reading stuff that's coming home and I can help you understand it. But if you understand it, great. If you don't understand it, you can ask the teacher and be like, hey, can you explain to me like what method, or just ask what the school reading curriculum is. And you're not expected to like be an expert in knowing what school reading curriculum is, but just like that can give you a starting place to like look up that curriculum and be like, is this science of reading based or not? And you can kind of like find that out. And then it's kind of hard because people always say they don't want to ruffle feathers, but I actually had someone on my podcast say this. She was like, kids' lives are on the line. Ruffle feathers, you'll be saving someone's life. And like, because we know that illiteracy is directly related to anxiety, depression, homelessness, suicide, incarceration. And if kids aren't reading by third grade, those rates just increase so rapidly. So
Really?
yeah, like
Wow.
illiteracy is connected to poverty. It's such a solvable social justice issue if
Yeah.
we just keep talking about it and getting the right things. For the parent that's like, I notice like, maybe the parent listening to this isn't worried that their child is at risk for that because they have so many resources outside of school. And that's great. But there are a lot of kids that don't. So think about it like that you're advocating on behalf of all children. Ask questions like say like, hey, can you talk to me about this curriculum? Or I'm learning about the science of reading. I wonder what I know it's not a quick switch, but I wonder what the school's process is for getting the entire staff trained in the science of reading research so that we can make sure that all kids have a chance at learning how to read and have a chance at a successful life. And I know that that's not an easy undertaking, but I am happy to join the school board meetings, or I'm happy to organize parents for an explanation night, or like I've actually been brought into several school districts to do like a parent informational 1 hour thing, because there's the training you can bring in, but a lot of times you do need to get parents on board, or you need to like have like the PTA be like, this is what's happening, or raise money
Yeah.
for it. And so I like to do, I'm not going to do the full training for the whole school, but I like to do the part where like making it make sense to parents. And so that like often will generate like, okay, now we got 20 parents that care about this. Now we can start raising money. But really starting with going to the teacher and the administration and being like, I'm aware of this now. I know I'm not an expert, but I'm on your side. I want to be a part of the change, even though my kid's in 8th grade, or even though we're moving. Like, how can I help start this change? Because I think a lot of us think, oh, it's way too big for me. But the small steps will help us get there.
I love that. What you said made me think of two things. One, are teachers not traditionally trained in the science of reading? Is that like not is
What
that
else?
loaded? That's probably a loaded question. I could tell by your giggle.
I know. It's loaded because again, there's no regulation. So some universities might do it. I've heard from 3 people. So I have a following across my channels of like 250,000. I've heard from 3 people that said that they got trained in undergrad now, but I hear daily from hundreds, if not thousands of people that are like, how come I didn't get this training in undergrad or my graduate program to be a reading specialist?
Wow.
So I actually don't know why it's not done in undergrad, but I have a lot of speech language pathologist friends, and they have a much closer training in science of reading research than typically undergrad teachers do, because it's so related to
Really?
like sounds.
Okay.
So it's weird. I think I'm hoping that it's going to start evolving and that will be taught in teacher training programs, but
Yeah.
no, it's not included
Wow. That's
typically.
crazy. Wow. And the other thing that what you said made me think of, because like in my mind, so you said third grade, and in my mind, that feels a lot like we know that early intervention, like the first 3 years of life, if we want to be in there and we want to be in there as soon as possible because that is our window, right? Like not that you
Right.
can't make changes after that because you absolutely can, but that's your window where like you can nip things in the bud, you can help progress them through them so much quicker, you can reroute their neural paths. Like what is it? Do you have an opinion about or like knowledge on why third grade specifically?
Well, it just gets trickier, like, because, okay, think about 3rd grade. We're no, a lot of time, 1st, 2nd grade, we're learning like the spelling rules. We're learning that C usually says K unless it's followed by an I, E, or Y. We're learning about magic E. We're learning that SH, when they're together, they don't say S, they say sh. That's called a digraph. We're learning about diphthongs, like that O and I don't say I. When they're stuck together, they say oi. Like we're learning each of these pieces along the way, hopefully in a structured literacy program. So that's happening from basically like kindergarten through second grade, a little bit of third grade as well. We're still learning some of these more complicated spelling rules like TION, shun in words, but most of the curriculum starts to change more. Like we're getting assignments of reading this long passage about the Civil War. And if we don't know how to decode basic words, there is no way that a child can do that. And so it just feels like, oh, I just got to quit. Like kids
Yeah.
are just shutting down. They're seeing this huge passage. And it's not just read this to read this, it's read this and tell me about it and explain something from it. And so if we don't have that strong foundation, it's like chaos.
Yeah. I can imagine. And like thinking about the anxiety, like I feel anxious with you just saying those rules. And I'm like, I don't know those rules. And I'm a grown woman and I can fully read. Like imagine being a second grader sitting there already, like starting to kind of fall behind, quote unquote. But then it's just like more and more keeps getting piled on you. A second grader doesn't know how to advocate for themselves and be like, wait, I don't
know.
understand that yet. Like that's heartbreaking.
I know.
Okay. Well, let's bring it back to a positive note on that. Can you give us, I would love to like wrap this up and tie this all together for parents with like one of your top simple tip or trick for encouraging a love of reading, encouraging like a child starting with like babies and toddlers, then maybe we can talk preschool, then maybe we can talk kindergarten, and then older kids or kids that are still struggling. I feel like that might be helpful for the gamut of who may be listening.
Okay. 2 things, 17 things. I just thought of so many things. 1, okay, let your kids see you reading. Kids don't do what we say, they do what we do. And start when they're babies, not just reading to them. Let them see you reading your book and being obsessed with it. Like,
does a Kindle count? Wait, does a Kindle count?
Yeah, I think a Kindle
it doesn't.
counts.
No, does it? I don't know your face. I want to know.
Okay, I would do a little bit of both, only because like they're probably not going to have a Kindle in like when they're 4, 5, 6. Oh, it will be hard to like transfer that understanding. Like, no, my books are on here. But like if you give them a Kindle, like if they have a Kindle like at 7, 8, 9, then Kindle totally counts. But I would say like try to do both because, like we don't want to give them the extra step and be like, no, my books are on here. Then they're gonna be like, your books are on the phone. Just so.
Wait, I'm sorry. I have to just say this. Have you seen that trend where I think it's mostly on TikTok, but it's like parents of babies have a book in front of like they're holding up a book and then they have their phone behind it and they're just like scrolling and they're like raising a kid that's gonna love to read. And I'm like, why didn't I think of that? Like
I literally said that in a parent workshop 6 years
Did
ago.
You?
I probably started the trend. No, I'm just
you
kidding.
You probably did.
But I did. A parent was like, what if I have a Kindle? Or like, what if I don't have time? I just have to do my work emails. I was like, you can fake it. Like if your baby is around, like put the book in front of it. Like I'm not saying that's the best thing, but like it does help, if they're not, let them see you reading. 2, let them see you making mistakes. I think like, first of all, like narrating anything out loud. So we talk a lot about mindset. Like I was just talking on someone else's podcast about this, that like the best thing, or she said, like, what do you do when a kid like doesn't want to read? And I was like, honestly, I can teach anyone how to read. The hardest part is overcoming the mindset. So help your kids have a good mindset and confidence around it by often narrating what you're doing. So not even with reading, but like if your kid's feeling anxious about going to school, like instead of being like, how was school? Did you make any friends? Like just starting to talk about your day. Like I took a tennis class today and I was kind of nervous because I actually didn't know where I was going. And I was like, what if I'm late? And what if like I'm wearing something that's different than everybody else? Or what if like people, how do I make friends? Like just like talk about how you feel. And that's going to give them the space to talk about how they feel. But then similarly, like with reading, so like write your grocery list. Say like, okay, we need eggs, and model like stretching out the word eggs, like eggs, and like let them see you spell the word. Let them see you struggle in writing a letter. Like, wait, I always forget how to spell caution.
I love that.
Say these things out loud so they aren't afraid of them. You don't need to buy extra things. So many people will be like, I saw an ad for this game that's going to teach my child how to read. I'm like, no, It's going to take up space in your house. You are going to teach your child how to read, and it's going to happen in these tiny moments. So that would look like for really little kids, like take a water bottle. You're just going to put a Post-it of a W on your water bottle, and we're starting to notice beginning sounds in real objects. Put like a T on the table. So you're starting to label beginning sounds. You don't need fancy toys and puzzles. If you like them, great, but like you don't need these things. And then if you do have a child who's struggling with reading or resisting reading, I would say don't fight with them. I have this one family that I worked with, and she was like, she hates reading. I feel like she hates me. What do I do? And I was like, you're not the bad guy. Like, tell her, get rid of those books. I once had a student that like said he hated that book, and I threw it in the garbage. I was like, go throw it in the garbage right now. I then went out and got the book and donated it just so nobody comes at me. Those moments are going to matter a lot to those kids who are saying, I hate reading. Not, no, you don't. Or, oh, you just haven't found the right book. That is not helping. They've already decided that. So like be with them. I understand that. I'm so sorry. And take a break. And then maybe let a week or two go by and just play a good audiobook. Like message me for Rex, but a good audiobook, and just have it playing in the car. Like don't bring it up. Don't say like, oh, hey, I'm going to start this. Just let it be playing. Let them start falling in love with that book. And then maybe this is what I would do, like first, second, third, fourth, even fifth grade. Maybe that book ends and it's part of a series. And then you go and get that book and then you start reading it to them. And then the third book, they, wouldn't you know it? Oh gosh, I'm so busy. I got to take care of the baby. I really want to hear the next part. Can you read that out loud to me? So you're not like saying like, you got to read out loud for 20 minutes. You're saying like, I want to hear this. And this is our thing together. Could you read it to me? So we're slowly going to phase in some good stories. We're not going to fight them.
I love that. Shout out to my mom for doing exactly that. And I'm just realizing it. We read, but she started the entire Harry Potter series out loud to each other. When I was a kid, we would do every night. It took us probably like 3 years. She saved all the books and now we're going to start it. But like, I don't think I ever put together the power of that. So that's really cool. Shout out to my mom.
Wait, isn't your mom an author?
She is an author. She is. She wrote a children's book actually about my dad and my oldest nephew. It's called Grandpa's Garden, and it is so sweet. It's about a little boy who doesn't like vegetables, so his grandpa encourages him to grow them in the garden with him. He does the entire thing, and then he ends up loving them. They like make soup together at the end of it, and then he ends up loving him. And I'll put a link to it in the episode notes.
Great.
But it's so cute.
And also, speaking of trends, did you see, I think it was a New York Times article that said Gen Z has stated that they're not reading to their children.
What?
And they're like, it feels weird. And I put a poll up on Instagram, and like I got like dozens of DMs being like, well, to be fair, I don't remember my parents reading to me. And I was like, I know.
Wow, that's really interesting.
I know.
Oh my gosh. Something else. You said something else that made me, I wanted to say, comment on it. I can't remember now. Oh, it's totally not related. Why am I even doing this? It was just about what you were saying about telling your kids like when you're feeling anxious or something, because one of my kids is starting to struggle. Seems like they're struggling a little bit with anxiety. So we've been putting some things in place, but I had an eval the other day and I was saying to her, that I was feeling really nervous about it. And she was like, why? And I'm like, I always feel nervous because it's brand new. Like I might not know what the baby needs. I might feel stumped, like I'm, whatever. And she was like, and it was the first time that I think I've ever like actually voiced that to her. And like, I could see it in her face that she was like, you get nervous, And then she even asked me about it and was like later in the day and was like, how did your eval go? Did you feel nervous? I was like, yeah, I did, but it went great. Like it was awesome. And it was such a powerful moment for me. But anyway, that just made me think of it when you said that.
I think we think like that kids want to see us be an expert at everything, but like the best thing you can do is not be an expert, to show them like how to grow.
Totally. And how normal being a human is, and that those feelings are probably going to be there forever, but like you can get through them, you can do hard things. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I think we are nearly out of time, but I would love to just wrap this up with, tell us again, like if parents are like, okay, I know that I need more. I want to find her. I want to find her stuff. Where can they find you? And I will put it all in the episode notes, like links to everything so that they can easily get to you. But I feel like I know if I was listening to this, I'd be like, I need her stuff. And I've taken it and I can confirm you need her stuff. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, okay. BigCityReaders.com. We have a whole free resource library. I have tons of blog posts. Like, should I red shirt kindergarten, or what to do if you see a behavior chart in your child's classroom, or how to talk to your child's teacher about sight words, like literally scripts and like thousands of blog posts. So bigcityreaders.com, and message me on Instagram, Big City Readers, and mention this and I'll help you with whatever. Like I'm serious. I always tell people, send me a picture of what feels confusing and I'll try to break it down. So,
best.
you know, like we're here, we're with you. We're not trying to be influencers. We're just trying to help people.
Preach it. Preach it. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Seriously, thank you so much for this and for being here. This was awesome. And I hope that it's helpful for anyone out there navigating, like feeling stressed about it or feeling stressed about reading in general, kindergarten, all of that stuff. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I just remembered, actually, I have a free parent workshop.
That is so something I would do. I created that.
I forgot we just put it up. It's on the website, and it's like a literal 35-minute crash course in what your kindergarten first or second grader needs to know and like what you need to know as the parent.
I love it. Oh my God. I swear my team, when they're listening to this, is going to be like, two peas in a pod.
I literally am like, every time I do something, my team is like, hey, did you think about telling people about that workshop you just spent 2 years making? No?
Promoting yourself in literally any way. I don't know.
Yeah. It's too hard. So yeah, watch that.
Okay. We will link that in the notes. And yeah, thank you so much. Hopefully we can do this again because I know that this is going to be helpful for people, but I so appreciate you.
Oh my gosh, I appreciate you. You are the best. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Okay. And yeah, we'll see you next time on another episode of More Than Milestones.